holy cow, the second largest music property in the world. I pretty much single-handedly converted the entire lyric space that entire music industry couldn't get licensed and legalized. Everybody got licensed and started to pay royalties for publishing rights in the span of a year or two. And every site is licensed today.
Are there things that you did 10 years ago that you wouldn't do today?
Kind of younger, you don't have much. So you get like a high too, like seeing success, especially when it's like on a daily basis. You did something the night before, you turn it on, you go to sleep, you wake up and it's like you already see success. The next morning, there's no high like that. I'm telling you.
When I was early in my career, I was basically willing to do whatever it takes to get off the ground, or that's what it felt like. I don't think I broke any major laws or hurt any people, but it did feel that way. What's up, Val?
What's up, Sieva? How's everything?
Things are good, man. Things are good. I appreciate you coming on to talk to me. You and I have been friends for a little while now, and I know a lot about your businesses, which I want to go into here in a moment. But one thing that I was thinking about this week is you've had so much success in your life, and I imagine that you don't have to work anymore. I have never asked you this or not, so you can kind of confirm or deny it. But what I'm really curious about is like, why are you still working so hard? Like what kind of drives you?
Good question. I tried to take off, like retire, lasted like 3 years. And I just felt like something was missing. I kept like trying to build things and I was end up being busy with little things all the time. And it just kind of like all roads pointed to, man, I'm built to build things. So I had to go into something. Yeah, you're right. Like I don't really need to work, but I love doing it. I love enjoying. Yeah, like I enjoy building teams now more than like now that I learned how to build organizations versus kind of some of the businesses that I built in the beginning where they were like, I was like a lone wolf or I had a small wolf pack or something like that. But now I'm like able to build like organizations that could scale and operate even when I'm not really there every day.
Tell me a little bit more about how do you personally work differently? Like, is your mental approach to business different than it was like 10, 15 years ago? Is like your time commitment different? Is the way you bucket your time different? How are you like, and emotionally, like, how do you feel about the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think I still think about things very similarly the way I've done from the beginning. However, look, man, you get some success, you get a little more comfortable for sure, and I'm like very cognizant of it, and it kind of bothers me actually, the fact that I got more comfortable because that hunger kind of forced you to, or not forced you, actually didn't force me, but like it made you want to build things faster, stronger, like go through the night. It's just a different level of energy you have when you're kind of younger, you don't have much, and so you get like a high too. Getting it's a high, like seeing success, especially when it's like on a daily basis. You did something the night before, you turn it on, you go to sleep, you wake up, and it's like you already see success. The next morning, there's no high like that. I'm telling you that I've ever felt, at least. And I'm pretty conservative like I don't do drugs or anything like that. So for me that's a huge high. Today it's harder to feel that because you're more successful, and to move the needle it takes a lot more. But I look at things more like longer term. I'm like I have bigger visions for things, and I'm willing to give it more time and more resources to build out that vision. I think that's a big difference now between now and then.
Do you feel like you're more risk averse? Like, are there things that you did 10 years ago that you wouldn't do today? Like, I mean, you have a family now and you have assets, and I imagine some of that like crazy work that you're talking about also comes with an appetite for risk, or at least for most people, I think it does, especially with age. How do you feel about risk? Can you tell us about anything that like you did in the past that you probably wouldn't do today?
I would say I went through 3 stages at this point. The first stage was when you have nothing, right? You just build, like, and you just like accumulate income and wealth, and from zero, right? So that's the first stage, and you don't really want to focus. And luckily, I didn't focus on anything, accumulating assets, nothing. Like I lived in a small house, even though I was making all this crazy money, and that was great. That allowed me to be very focused. I think that's very important to anybody who is just taking off, whether it's in their career or as an entrepreneur. Try not to focus on acquiring assets, fine clothes, big house, nice car. Like it was not the stuff that really kind of where I focused my time on. Then the second stage, I would say that it's like I started making like even more money, right? Like it was all income coming in, and I just started getting like all into investing into all kinds of things. Like I went on a investment sprees of, I don't know, you name it, domain names. Like I dropped millions of dollars of domains in a short span of time, and then like I would just make these investments, and even like private investments as an angel. I would write these huge checks at the time, and I think I learned a lot from that.
Does that mean you made a bunch of mistakes? Like I feel like when people go from being entrepreneurs to investing, they suck at it.
Yeah, I mean,
Were you like just naturally good, or did you get kicked in the shins?
I've always been way more successful with what I've built personally, like businesses I've built or founded, versus anything I invested into that's just an investment. So no, and my returns on investing in myself have by far outpaced anything I've invested anywhere outside. So no, I was not very good at hitting. I didn't hit it like any home runs, unfortunately, and I was writing really big checks, and so that I stopped doing that, and I kind of learned to. So I guess the third stage I'm in now is like, okay, I've accumulated more actually, because I sold some of my businesses. I would say so like I have more assets now, but like not necessarily actually not as much income, because I sold a lot of my very high income producing businesses. And so I became a lot more aware of how do I allocate whatever is coming in and my assets. And like it's a little bit more like, okay, invest into things that have longer term rewards. And that includes, by the way, investing into what I'm building myself. Like I rather put that money into something I'm building right now than, write $1 million check to for some other founder to invest into. So I mean that's I mean I still make big bets, but it's usually bets into like more in the stock market, or I mean even like I've done crypto stuff as well, but nothing major.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing more or mostly just direct investing. Like you're saying, either I'm going to bet on myself or I'm going to invest in the S&P 500 or crypto directly. I'm not going to give it to somebody to manage my money, or I'm not going to give it to some startup. Or are you still doing that?
I do very little bit of startup and investing, with like tiny bit, management, more professionals, and just like spreading it out for more. I'm not like writing big checks anymore. Most of my capital goes into, again, my businesses right now. Like my real estate development business is sucking up a lot of my capital, but it's like the returns are great, and I feel very comfortable with that investment. My new company, that's in the kind of the jewelry space. That's where a lot of my capital is going as well. Again, that's like I'm a CEO of that business, and I spend most of my time in that. So I just feel like it's very hard for me to get the returns I get from my own when I invest in myself from the outside. So like why spend much time and money doing it then?
Yeah, I'm asking because I've made a lot of, or partially because I've made a lot of angel investments, and most of them suck. Like some of them have done really, really well, but most of them really suck. And one thing that I've learned about myself is I just don't like owning a tiny piece of some kind of imaginary story that even if it works out, and gave me a bunch of money, like I got no pleasure or joy from being part of that journey for 10, 15 years or however long it takes to get liquid.
Yeah, it's the
Like
other thing.
it's too speculative.
It takes too long too.
Takes too long. Yeah.
Yeah, like last year, I kind of restarted doing it last year, and I made like probably close to 50 investments last year, but they were all like relatively small compared to like what I used to do in the past. But in the past, I would just invest into 10, 15 instead of 50. So we'll see what happens to that class of to that vintage. Right now, I kind of paused again and to see how that plays out, and then we'll see if I'm calling it quits on my angel investing.
Yeah, we'll see if you're the next Mike Moritz, world-class VC investor.
Probably not.
So it's interesting because you didn't really answer the risk question. Like maybe you don't perceive as what you do as risky, but I know like when I was early in my career, I was basically willing to do whatever it takes to get off the ground, or that's what it felt like. I don't think I broke any major laws or hurt any people, but it did feel that way. And like looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that person could have crossed some lines, some gray lines in order to not even be successful, but to like have anything at all. Frankly, I had nothing. I had zero. And
You
to
don't
have like,
think you crossed any legal lines?
I won't answer those on the record. I will neither confirm nor deny. But like, I would never do those things today for more assets, more success, et cetera, et cetera. So do you have kind of a similar lens, or does that not apply to you?
I don't think I got less risk averse, to be frank. I'll still try things. Like sometimes I'm just like curious to see how that something plays out. So I'll still make those investments. Like look, even the business that I'm building, the jewelry business, people call me crazy for investing the amount of money I invested into that and the time I invested into that. So that's a big risk that I took. Going out there to help kind of the independent jewelers, because that's all we do, versus what I'm like used to from the past, where I would help like corporations, what used to be my clients for my other businesses, right? And I really wanted to do something else, and so I went after this like very fragmented space that is independent jewelers. So, and I put up a lot of capital. It's all my own capital. I have no outside investors. People thought, even the people inside the jewelry industry thought I was crazy for trying to accomplish to take on like this huge task. Plus, it's very capital intensive. So no, if anything, I probably got even more. I probably took on even more risk just like with that thing alone. I'm not scared to take risk like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When you told me about your business, even though I know it's very successful, I was like, man, this guy's crazy. Like like the jewelry industry is so obscure, and like they're not ready. They're like not prepared fully for technology yet, I'm sure. And you're kind of dealing one-on-one with these jewelry owners. I respect that you're willing to just like put everything on the line behind yourself. It's really freaking cool.
I said, yeah, well, I figured I'll give it a shot. So here we are.
I think I remember you moved to the US when you were like a teenager, right? From the Soviet Union or from Russia at the time. Tell me a little bit about why did your parents move here, and where did they move to?
Yeah, so I came here when I was 11. So I don't know, is that a teenager yet? It's not a teen yet, right?
It's not a teenager just yet.
So 11 years old. I came from former Soviet Union, which is, the part I'm from is Uzbekistan. So I lived in Uzbekistan, which is no longer it's not part of Russia or anything like that. But I only spoke Russian. I never really learned the native language there. We came because, just like better life. My parents wanted better life for us. The opportunities weren't really there. It's a pretty poor country. Even after the Soviet collapse, it became even poor. Like where we were from, it became more poor than Russia itself, for example. So they just wanted like better life for us. And somebody who's by the way, we didn't have a really bad life there. There's definitely always like persecution and all that, but my family was pretty well established there because of my grandfather, who was like a famous singer in like Central Asia area. And in fact, like I grew up as a child seeing him on TV, like on a pretty consistent basis. And by the way, it's not like 500 channels of TV that we have here. Like you have literally 2 channels in that country. Which is like, hey, you got like the Moscow channel, and you got the local Uzbekistan channel, and that's it. So it's very hard to get on TV. It's like because literally
he was legit, like super legit.
Yeah, you know, he had 5 albums, and it was always crazy to me how everything worked, especially now I think about it even more, how things worked in Soviet Union. So he was this like famous singer, and he was on a payroll from Soviet Union. So everybody has pretty much like the same salary. Like, so you could be a famous, super famous singer, and you have the same salary as whatever, janitor, or teacher. Everybody makes pretty much the same salary, and so that's pretty insane, right?
It
Although,
is insane. I'm just imagining the job application process where, he obviously had to like file forms with the like USSR, and he just like walks into the job center of the government, and the guy's wearing like a Soviet uniform, and your grandpa like hands him this application, and the guy's like, all right, sing. And he like sings into a mic, and he's like, checks the box, and he's like, okay, you're going to be a singer for the USSR. That's what you're going to get paid for.
yeah, I don't even know what the process for that is. But actually, crazy thing is, he was actually a lawyer first, and he's actually very unique person. His father died when he was 6. So I'll quickly tell you a story because it's actually kind of interesting. His father died when he was 6 years old, when kind of communists took over, and then they were just kind of like basically religion became illegal, right? They put everybody into jails so we were Jewish, and his father was like he would make kosher meat, so he got caught for making kosher meat, put him in jail, and then he wouldn't eat in jail, so he died actually from not
Oh man, that's so sad. Fuck.
starvation. And so my grandfather like grew up, became a lawyer, and then obviously he worked for the government as a lawyer. He was like very very soft-hearted, I guess, where like the government would say, okay, look, you got to prosecute this woman who stole a loaf of bread to feed her kids, right? And then he'd be like, well, what about all these guys who just like stole truckloads of stuff to sell in the black market? They're like, the same bread, just like they he's like, yeah, don't look that direction. So he couldn't do it. He quit as a lawyer, became like a music professor, and then like became like a music, I think, host on the radio, and then just like kind of career took off. And you do make a lot of money because you like these people would do weddings there, and he would go into these weddings, and people just shower you with cash, right? Because like that's the thing you do if you're putting on a wedding, especially where we live in like Central Asia, Uzbekistan. So he actually was making a ton of money, kind of like off the books, and that's how musicians and would make money there. It's kind of like touring, but you tour weddings.
Yeah.
So anyway, very interesting story, because like it always makes me think like he always wanted to do the right thing, even though it didn't help his case necessarily in the beginning. He was doing the right thing, and he was like loved. He was loved for it by the people. The country was like it was actually largely a Muslim population, and he, being Jewish, like it's crazy that to get to be famous as a Jewish person, to be famous in that region, right? It just says so much about what kind of character you have to achieve success. And I always think about it because it kind of connects with business in general. A lot of times you could do things to whatever, maybe it's not the right thing to do, whether it's legally or morally. And if you have like a very very solid compass for that, I think it helps you long term, because you just have like so much more legitimacy and credibility that naturally comes from the business world. So anyway, I know that's like I told a whole long story about him, but I that really connects um, to I think a lot of people missing, like people try to cut corners or make a quick buck, and I don't think it really pays off necessarily long term. Maybe maybe
Mm-hmm.
you make some quick money, but I think it's important to have that kind of the credibility out there.
No, I totally agree. And I appreciate you sharing that background on your grandfather. I think so much of what our kind of parents and lineage did and sacrificed is like the foundation of who we are and like what drives us, like in my entrepreneurial journey, there's been many kind of peaks and valleys, like some days that are really fucking hard. I've never thought of quitting, but I do think of like my grandparents and my parents and like how they behaved and like the sacrifices they made. And then it puts everything in perspective for me. And I'm like, oh, this is good. Like, this is easy. What I'm doing is easy. I'm just going to keep going, you know?
Yeah,
And frankly, they
through
gave me
that
this
lens.
opportunity to do it. So I have to do it, is kind of how it feels.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at through that lens, what we're dealing with is usually piece of cake.
Yeah. I actually just talked to my grandmother last week. And I was just like, tell me a little bit about your life when you moved to the U.S. And she started telling me, because she told me about her life in Russia or in the Soviet Union and the Ukraine. They were also Jewish, so she told me they had like a passport where I think it had like a sixth line or fifth line or something that other people didn't have because it said Jewish was like the line on their passport. So
Wow.
that designation like prevented them from participating in many parts of society. So like I guess my dad had gotten into some famous engineering college, and on his like first day of enrollment he showed up and the dean called him into his office and he's looking through his paperwork and he opens his passport and he thinks about it for a little bit and he hands back the materials to my dad and he goes, hey, like unfortunately we can't enroll you here, you know, we're fully booked now. And
Yeah.
my dad was like, why, what's going on? Like, you guys already admitted it. I got the admittance letter, et cetera. And the guy, you know, like people wouldn't usually explicitly tell you, but they'd be like, well, you know why? And that was kind of the end of that conversation. So I've heard a lot of stories like that, and I'm just grateful that I haven't experienced that in California.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have stories like that as well in my family, and it's people don't realize what kind of what kind of freedoms we have now until you look at see those kind of stories that used to happen, but they still happen in a lot of places in the world. And I know, like everybody's just fighting over politics here, but it's like it's a joke because relatively speaking, we're like living in by far the best times ever, and
For sure.
it's hard to see that, right? Like people just complaining about things that it's like why we shouldn't be complaining about.
Well, just the act of being able to complain and wake up the next day not in like
Yeah,
a Siberian gulag is a treat in itself, you know.
yeah.
So that's for sure a win. Okay, so your family moves to the U.S. You are age 11. I imagine you didn't speak English. So you're probably spending the next few years just kind of getting your bearing, being that Russian kid. Where did they move to?
So we moved to Queens, New York.
Okay.
I went to a school. My aunt lived here already for a number of years, so I went to a school. I lived in her house for three months, and I went to a school that was like not a single Russian speaker there. Although there was that's 1992, so there was like a big wave of immigrants coming in from former Soviet Union at the time, and they would typically be like in certain areas. But that's not the area where I was living for the first 3 months. So yeah, I mean, I picked up the language pretty quickly. I always loved like American culture, even before I got here. Whatever I could get my hands on in terms of culture, any movies I could get my hands on, which was very few. So I always loved it, like from day one. So it was very easy for me to pick up the language. Most of my friends were like not Russian, so. Um, yeah, so I did that for 3 months, and funny enough, my aunt and her husband, they owned a couple of jewelry stores. So I used to work at jewelry stores for like every weekend till I was like 17 or something like that, and even like even on weekdays during the summers. So I actually had experience working at an independent jewelry store for many years. It's kind of funny enough how like life kind of came around later. Yeah, like so we grew up in Queens. We then moved to an apartment. It's just me and my brother, and then I always like wanted a computer my whole life. Finally got my computer at like 16 years old. I was 16 years old, got my computer, and this is right around the time when AOL just like start rolling out like the unlimited access or whatever. And once I got on the
I
internet,
remember they used to send CDs, like 100
oh
CDs
yeah,
to
like
my house.
everybody had stacks of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So once I got on the internet, I mean, it was just like I just felt like limitless. It's just things just took off from there. I figured one thing after another. Taught myself everything, and just didn't stop from then.
Tell me about the first biz. Like, what got the wheels turning for you?
First biz, like, yeah, how do you define the first biz? Well, the first business,
like really, really first biz. Like, what was the first time you like sold something, or you were like, okay, I need to make a few bucks here. Here's how I'm going to do it.
So, I was always selling stuff actually, even before I even had the internet. So I would always like come to school with like baseball cards or basketball cards. Or like I'll buy an old pack of basketball cards and I'll open it up and then I'll be like, oh, like, you know, and I'll just sell them one by one. Be like, look how old these cards are. Like these are vintage cards. And you know, I'll pack like and I'll buy like a pack for 50 cents because it's old, nobody wants it. Then I'll, you know, in junior high school or middle school, I would go into the kids and be like, oh, look at these vintage cards, and I'll sell each card for like $1 or $2. And so I was always selling things. The first thing I started like really as a business, I started arbitraging computer parts and computer chips, especially between like eBay and some other auction houses online. So that started making money off doing that. And then like first kind of like a recurring business that I built was a content site for PlayStation fans. It's called PSX Extreme. Actually, it still exists. I sold it years ago, but it still exists. So that got like 20,000 daily users, and I started like making money right away on that.
So you're just like playing a bunch of PlayStation, or you know your friends have PlayStation, and then what? You started writing like how-to guides for the video games, or what?
So I stopped writing actually, and I hated doing it. So my brother was, who's actually almost 4 years younger than me, he was comfortable writing, so he would be my chief and editor or editor in chief. So he would actually write the content and do most of the content. I would try to figure out how to get some other content, like we'll have like PlayStation wallpapers and, you know, and other things like that don't need the writing. So I'll put all that together. But he was the writer.
How'd you convince him to do that? Like I tried to get my sister to help me with a couple things, and she's just like, no way.
I forgot. I don't remember what our structure was. But he was getting paid something, and he was young, so it was kind of easy to convince him to do stuff.
Yeah, you're like, you can hang out with me. Yeah. I'm the older brother. Let's do this thing. This is the game.
I don't know if that would have worked. He was definitely getting some. I think he just loved being getting free games, and he enjoyed the fact that at like his age, I think he was like 13 when he started doing it. He would like companies like Sony and Ubisoft and Activision, all these people, like they would reach out to him and I was like, hey, you know, can we send you games? Can we send you like gear? Can we send you like, they would just send us stuff. And he loved that. I mean, we got, I remember when PlayStation 2 just came out, we actually had a PlayStation 2 shipped to us from Japan by Sony. So we had like a PlayStation, and at the time they would launch in Japan, like I think it was PlayStation 2 or it was PlayStation 3. I think PlayStation 2. I was like 17, 18.
Man, that's the dream. When you're a 17-year-old, somebody ships you a free PlayStation. That's it. You made it.
Yeah, well, he was 13, so that's why you would love doing it, right? So my brother, he was like 13, 14 years old. And yeah, but back then, like they didn't launch PlayStations globally. They launched it like 6 or 9 months ahead of US. Like Japan would get them first. So no, you know, so it was crazy. Like we got a PlayStation 9 months before anybody else had it. Anyway, so I think that's what kind of kept him going. He loved kind of the getting access to all this stuff.
Got it. Okay, so you start the PlayStation site. What was your first hit? Like what made you your first real money?
So PlayStation site was actually making like $5,000 a month, which is pretty good money when you're in high school, right? So I thought,
yeah, absolutely.
I guess you could
pretty good money today.
You could say that. Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, this is like I'm talking 1998, I think, or so. So you know, I would say that was a hit already. Then the .com bubble burst. Like that 5,000 went to $500 a month, and because like all the ad
all
networks
ads based.
Yeah, all the ads went to shit. Right, like 90% of the ad revenue went away. So I had to figure out how to start selling advertising myself. Turns out I was pretty good at selling, so I sold a bunch of ads on my site, and I quickly realized that I don't have enough traffic on my site. I have more demand from advertisers that I could sell to directly than I actually had traffic. So I started looking for other sites to sell, other video game sites to sell advertising on. It's like, hey, I got like these advertisers. I don't have enough traffic. They'll spend more if I had the traffic. I'll let me sell them your space and we'll like split the revenue. And yeah, like I got sites that were like 10, 20 times bigger than my site to let me sell advertising on their sites. And so that's kind of like how I started arbitraging some of the ad space out there. And
That's
that
so
kind of led
interesting.
to me realizing.
Why were you so good at sales? Like what was it? I mean, you're like a 17-year-old kid. You have this little rinky-dink site and somehow you're out there getting enough attention. Did you have to kind of overwhelm your site and sell on other people's bigger sites, frankly? Were there any like sales strategies that you were using, or it was just kind of happenstance? Are you incredible at outbound? What's the secret?
I think the secret is that, so I don't think I was actually very good at sales because, I think a good salesperson could sell like anything, even if it's not a great product or service. Like I was never good at doing that. So I always sold something that actually worked really well. And I was good at selling, meaning in terms of going out to the market nonstop, right? And just reaching a lot of people, doing a lot of outbound with all kinds of hours of the day. So I was relentless in that regard. So what I was able to just figure out is that, look, these kinds of ads work on these kinds of sites. So now I just got to find more advertisers like that, because I know that once they go live as an advertiser, these are gonna be profitable ads for them, and they're gonna just like want to buy as much as they could. So that's it. It's very easy to sell something when your client is actually making money for every dollar they spend. So they spend $1 and they make $2. They'll want to spend $5 to make 10, and they'll want to spend so that there's no end to it. So performance advertising. So the advertising has to perform to scale.
So you have this first arbitrage opportunity. What happens next?
I started to find more advertisers that work well, and first advertiser that I started to promote on a performance basis, like I would actually get paid on a CPA basis, was at the time half.com, which later got acquired by eBay and it's part of eBay now. But they would sell like video games and textbooks and DVDs at the time and CDs. So I would promote video games on our video game sites, and I saw some like a little bit of success with it, but very little. So I was like, hey, how do I but I knew they had an unlimited budget. So I tried that. That's when I decided to try search for the first time, search advertising, which back then nobody even knew what the heck it was. There was no Google back then. And the moment I tried that, actually I lost money the first time I tried, right? I actually lost $5,000 the first night. There were no budget caps at the time. I turned it on at night. I went to sleep. I wake up in the morning. I lost $5,000.
That's like a month's worth of income. Did you freak out?
Yeah, it was a lot of money for me. And I was like, holy cow. And I say this a lot because that kind of like my positive, like my glass full mentality is half full mentality always helps me, because I think a lot of people would have said, holy cow, I lost $5,000. I'm never doing this again. I looked at it as, okay, I spent $6,000 and it was and it generated 1,000 in revenue. So that's how I lost $5,000. The way I looked at it, I was like, holy cow, I generated $1,000. Where did that $1,000 come from? So I started optimizing and figured out like where that $1,000 worth of sales came, and just keep optimizing, and then turn it into to ROI positive. And then from there, I was just took that formula and just started plugging it away at more products at half.com, but then adding other advertisers, not just half.com, but eventually, just blowing that out to 800 different advertisers. So that was the real, that's when I first made real money, real money. And I mean, that business would generate like millions of dollars a year. And that was like a one-man show doing it.
Those are the simpler days. You don't have like staff of 20 or 50 or 100 people and you're just making millions of dollars. It's just you. You have nobody to worry about. It seems kind of nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun. It's a very different atmosphere. Like it feels very different to do it that way versus kind of building out teams. Yeah, you're right. Like you just like there's always something happening when you have offices and teams and like I mean I have global teams now. So there's always something to manage and somebody to manage versus when you're in full control of just yourself. So yeah, definitely. It's nice. I don't think I want to go back to that, but it was definitely nice to not have to deal with all the things you can't control.
Yeah, I hear that. I definitely hear that. What happened to that business? Did you end up selling it, or did it kind of run its course? What was the end result of it?
So that first business I never sold. Once I launched the second business, and that business just started to generate even more profits than that first one. I kind of let my first business sunset so I could focus on the second one. So it was kind of throwing off cash for a good while actually on its own, and but I stopped focusing on it, and no, I never sold it. But it was the right decision at the end of the day because my second business like spawned actually three other businesses, and I ended up selling two of them. I still own one of those, and it's a pretty big company today. So that business was like so successful, and I did sell that business and another one.
What was what was that business that came out of that first one?
Yeah, so it was kind of like music content, but largely it was the ringtones. So it was the ringtone business that I
Oh
wrote
yeah, you were the guy who was selling me all the ringtones in the 2000s. I couldn't get away from those ads.
So we were everywhere. I mean, those ringtone ads were reaching 500 million people a month. Globally, I mean, I locked in distribution in like 60, 65 countries or so, and we had like pretty much monopoly on distribution of ringtones. That actually right before I sold we started to transition to distribution of subscription music services. So we actually launched Apple Music when that subscription service came out, and so instead of saying, "Hey, like you want to get this ringtone," it was like, "Hey, you want to listen to the song on Apple Music?" And it was like the same distribution channel that was used, and it was by far the largest distribution channel of music content.
Man, those ringtones. When I remember when they were popularized, or I mean, they were popular for a long time. I was like, who's paying for these things? There must have been people that were buying like dozens of different ringtones. Like, I mean, I was a kid. I don't think I ever bought a single ringtone, but I guess everybody was buying one.
Yeah, and so what I was promoting was subscription services to ringtone service. So you basically actually just pay $9.99 a month generally, and you subscribe to like the service, and you get whatever number of ringtones a month, like as an allowance. So that's what we were selling. And the great thing back then, they no longer have it now, but at the time it was called premium SMS. So essentially you could bill to your cell phone bill. So you don't need a credit card. And like, those years actually credit cards still weren't that prevalent, especially if you're a younger person. So that allowed people to basically subscribe to your ringtone service without actually having a credit card. So it really created like a lot less friction to sign up. So I think that's what drove the business. It was, the fact there was subscription, there was like a lifetime value, but it's also like low friction to sign up. Again, at the time, today, it's a lot less friction to buy anything online now because everything, like your credit card is usually saved on your Apple Pay or it's saved on your Shop Pay, like Shopify service, right? It's saved somewhere, the credit cards. But back then, that wasn't the case. So anytime you ask for a credit card, your conversion rates go down. And but the premium SMS was allowing that to have pretty low friction.
I mean, I want to call it a niche, but it's obviously not a niche. Like it became, it's like something that everybody experienced, but it's like the segment of history that I don't know, like what happened now? Like, and is it the type of ringtones where like somebody calls me and like Usher plays?
Yeah.
Or is it like when they call me and they listen, it goes to like it's like ringing, And
yeah, that's called a ringback tone.
Ringback tone.
Yeah,
okay.
No, we weren't selling those. Those are typically were provided by the carriers themselves. I'm not even sure if all carriers had that service or not. But I remember like Sprint, I think, had it, and maybe Verizon had it. But they would sell that service that directly, not through not
Okay,
something
because
like
I
not through
think I
ringtone.
had Usher, like the yeah song, like yeah yeah. I think that used to play when people would call me, which is like fun the first time, and I think pretty annoying like the 10th time someone
So he
calls you.
calls you, yeah.
Is the ringtone business still around? I don't know why I assumed it had kind of sunset, but whether it's your business or just in general, is like this category still around?
The distribution network is still around. Yeah, the company that acquired it from us, they still have it. It's still a profitable business. From what I know, um, and but a lot of it is not to sell ringtones nowadays. It's just sell other music content. So like actually, like Apple Music is is still a big client of that distribution network. I think Apple's buying it like in many countries. So they're using it to grow their subscription base.
Is it still mostly lyric sites? Because I think I remember you told me at some point you'd started like or grown one of the largest, if not the largest, lyric sites out there. Was that one of the main distribution networks, and is that still a distribution network, or is it totally different now?
It's a good question. I would think it's still lyrics are still a big part of that network. I didn't actually build. I didn't actually have a big lyric site. I just had every lyric site and pretty much any kind of music site with content was in my network. So what I did is I just signed. I had exclusive agreements, distribution agreements with all these music sites, including lyrics, and like lyrics were huge and they converted the best. So yeah, so I did own one. I actually owned one lyric site that I bought fairly early in the game, just so I could keep my tabs on what's going on in the industry. So anytime some other vendors are trying to like get into my space, because there's people start copycatting me a little bit, and that site was kind of, it wasn't huge, but it wasn't small. It was like one of the top, I don't know, maybe one of the top 30, top 20 sites that I bought in the lyric space. So anytime somebody wants to sell something to the lyric space, I would get an email, right? And so I kept tabs on all my competition through that site. Nobody knew I owned it, and it was actually fun to have kind of insight, track on everything that was. So I could see it coming in way in advance. So I could.
Yeah, that's a really interesting strategy. So you're both the mobile ad network, but you are also own one of the lyric sites. So you get to experience what the lyric site is experiencing, right? Like whether it's inbound or referrals or whatever is going on in the industry,
Yeah.
you get to see it as a customer.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that. Were you like in the background for all this? Are you just like the pipes, or did you get any like cool entertainment like opportunities? Like, did you go to like Jay-Z's concert in Vegas or something and get to hang out with them? Like, what were you getting any of the flashy music
No,
industry stuff?
I stayed
No.
totally under the radar. Nobody knew I
Okay.
existed. So yeah, like it's crazy that in fact one of a music executives who lived in the area, because we were in Port Washington. Sorry, we were in Manhasset, New York, which is like out on Long Island. And I remember I was hiring an executive, or I was doing an executive search, and one of them walks in for an interview, and he happened to live in the area, and he's like, "Holy cow! The second largest music um, property in the world is in my backyard of Long Island." It's like, what? I would never thought of that,
Yeah.
right? So I actually ended up hiring him, and people had no idea who we were. We existed. We were totally in the background, and it was probably by design. And I wanted to stay away from the light, from the limelight. Also because kind of like when we started the business, all the sites were illegal. All the content was illegal. They're all owned by like people in Romania, China, Ukraine, Russia, whatever. Like they just to stay out of the copyright areas. So they could nobody could like shut down their servers and all that. And what nobody knew was that my business. So they started making so much money off of ringtones. At that point, I realized that like, okay, the ringtones were just like little text ads. They were sitting above and below lyrics mostly, or next to the content. But when I was looking at the site, was seeing all these display ads, and there were display ads at the time were generally like served by like Google ads, right? And they were like ugly, whatever. It's like, holy cow! Like I have like all these music sites are on my umbrella. They already trust me to generate revenue. So we launched a media company to take over all that display space. We built a sales team to go to all the major brands like Pepsi and T-Mobile and all these companies. And we say, hey, like we have this huge audience of music enthusiasts, and we like to, would you like to be in front of them? And so on the flip side, what I did, I went to all our publishers, the distribution channels, and I said, look, you have your site is illegal. No brand is going to ever spend any money putting their brand on your unlicensed website. Let's get you licensed. Okay. And at the time, I also built some relationships with a company that was kind of started to come up to make licensing easy. That was another thing. There was actually not an easy way to get licensed. So it wasn't all on the fact that they were trying to skirt copyright laws. There was really no easy way to get licensed for all the lyrics. They were handled by God knows how many different owners of those publishing rights. So we started going to those sites and saying, hey, like I'll sell your inventory to major brands, but you got to get licensed. And so what's crazy is, and I, I'm gonna pound on my chest right now a little bit, but I pretty much single-handedly converted the entire lyric space that entire music industry couldn't get licensed and legalized. Everybody got licensed and started to pay royalties for publishing rights, probably in the span of a year or two. And every site is licensed today.
Yeah, because it feels like such an obvious pitch, right? Like you're not making much money. I can make you a lot more money, but you have to go through this step where you're going to share a little bit of that lot more money with the brands, with the music industry, right?
Exactly. And I think that again, we kind of talked about credibility earlier, right? Like at that point, I already had the credibility of, hey, they know I already delivered, like generating a ton of actual revenue from the ringtone product. They were generating so much revenue. And so when I came to them and said, look, here's the next thing. Like you want to make even more revenue, you got to get licensed. You legitimize yourself, and then we'll sell you to the brands, and I'll invest into like building that network. I knew that's exactly what we did.
That's awesome. That's a really, really cool story. I want to pause right here on the business stuff. You wrote a Twitter post a while ago, maybe like 6 months ago, that went pretty viral. It was about parenting and teaching your kids the value of money through interest, through savings and interest, which I think is a really interesting topic, because I always wonder, you came from the Soviet Union, basically started with nothing here, and you built all of this kind of value and wealth. You understand the hard work that it took to get here. It may be a little bit harder for your kids to grasp that, or to really understand the value of money. Can you share a little bit about some of the strategies of parenting that you have to kind of get your kids thinking like an entrepreneur, like a business owner, of the value of money, all that stuff?
Yeah, like it scared me. I started having, once you have kids and you think about like how do you make them successful? How do you make them think the way have the hunger that you had? And I know that's impossible, right? Because like they're just growing up in a different environment. They have everything they need, different neighborhood, and like they have everything is hot. So the one thing that I think I realized is it's I think the common thread is resources, right? How much resources do you start with? And so essentially resourcefulness, like how much can you create out of the resources that you have? So what I try to do is I actually try to limit their resources a bit so that they could figure out how to be more efficient with a little bit of resources they have. So again, I'm not going to be able to recreate what I went through, right? Because the resources I had naturally were just like way lower than what my kids are going to grow up with. But I think a lot of parents make a mistake, and again, it's like everybody has different parenting style. But I think a lot of parents, especially ones that went from nothing to something, they feel like, okay, I don't want my kid to ever go through that, and so they give everything, right? And and then the kid gets like all the resources in the world, and then usually you don't see them make much out of that, right? So I actually do the opposite. I throttle resources, make them work for whatever they're trying to accomplish from less. So one of the things that I was trying to figure out how to get the how to get like them to understand money. So I came up with this concept of like, okay, why don't I pay them interest on whatever money they save in their piggy bank? So the idea just came like super like naturally, just like, okay, let's put a little Google sheet together. You're gonna get 12% interest, 12% because like 1% a month is just easy to explain to a child, right? And then we have a Google sheet that kind of has a formula that kind of shows exactly how much they made today, every day. And you could like start showing, explaining this a little bit in the early years, and then maybe without going into and showing the spreadsheet. And then as they get older, you show them the spreadsheet, and they get a little older, you kind of share it with them, so they could actually access and see it, like kind of like their own little bank account themselves. So the idea is that, okay, anytime you have any money, you could spend it, or you could just put it into this account, and that money will grow from the interest. So the whole concept is, instead of giving them an allowance, I pay interest instead. And again, started as a I don't know. I just tried something out and it stuck, and it definitely worked. Kids, like my kids, are always thinking about, well, I just got $200 for my birthday from gifts from grandma or whatever, and they think twice about just spending it, because they know if they put it into that account, all of a sudden their daily interest is going to go up. So and they monitor that.
That's such a cool idea. How far out do you have it stretched out? Do you have it like stretched out years or just 1 year?
Like how far back did I start?
Yeah,
this
on their
thing?
spreadsheet, like how far can they?
Oh,
How
I
many?
think it goes back like 10 years.
Okay,
Yeah, so
so they can
I have like plenty of historical data at this point.
they can see the compound value.
Yeah,
What's like the youngest age you think it started registering for one of your kids?
they're all a little different, to be honest with you. I think some of them were like, would start like as early as 3. They could start understanding a little bit of the concept of it.
Wow.
Like very, very, very high level. But I think it starts kicking in a little later. So you could like have these conversations pretty early, actually. Again, you got to like,
Very
every
cool.
child is different. Even my own kids, like they're all like very different. Some of them have less interest in it than others. So you kind of have to like gauge it by the character of each kid.
I'm definitely gonna give that a try. What else? What else is on your mind right now? Like, what do you want to talk about?
I don't know, man. Just trying to figure out how to scale life and scale businesses all at the same time, um, while trying to enjoy, family time. And so it's I come from the background of like very low, like there's no such thing as work life balance, right? Where I started, and so I'm still trying to figure that out. Actually, what is the work life balance, and how much I want to work versus how much I want to enjoy the fruits of my labor from the last couple of decades now. So I don't know. It's hard to figure out what that balance is. It takes time, I think.
What is like when you close your eyes? How old are you, by the way?
42.
Okay. When you close your eyes and you see like 52-year-old Val, like what do you see? Like what does happy Val look like? Like how much is work? How much is play? Like what are you doing with your time?
I'd like to be, run a bigger organization that has even stronger management teams that handle pretty much everything. And I just want to be kind of the captain who directs the ship, without kind of getting involved in too many details of the businesses. So I mean, to me, that's the ideal situation where I could be involved and drive the course of things, but without having to put out fires every day.
And what are you doing for fun? What are you doing for play?
I don't know.
In this
Travel, mostly like probably travel. Unfortunately, my hobbies are business related. So like I love building businesses, and as much as I try to figure out like what are my hobbies, that's it. Like that, I guess I'm a little bit cursed with that, but I love to travel. So I've been definitely doing a lot more travel with like kids and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you, man. Like business is my favorite hobby. If you just kind of gave me all the money in the world today and you told me you have to stop, I would be really, really sad, frankly.
Yeah.
Like I think I think it's like a video game. It's constantly evolving. Like it's always interesting. It's so dynamic and fun. It challenges you. Get to meet super smart people.
But what you just said it's exactly the case, right? When you sell a business, that's somebody's giving you money to, you know, and you can't, and you have to kind of stop working, right? Essentially.
That's why I don't like selling
What?
businesses. That's not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons I don't
But
like
that's
selling
what.
businesses.
Well, I guess that
I have
your
I
name,
have like separation issues.
uh, your business's name, Enduring Ventures, right? Kind of says it all. Like what you just told me
Yeah.
is because
Yeah.
your goal is to never sell as well.
Is there any asks that you have for folks? Like anything in particular you're looking for, or where people can find you if they want to reach out?
Well, you know, like all my stuff is on Twitter. So that's why although I've been less active, there was with this, you know, lately there was just so much content that I put out in the last year and a half since I, you know, started sharing my stories and all. But that's kind of like where you would find the most personal, most like deepest stories, my entrepreneurial journey and all that. It's all on Twitter. I haven't really put it anywhere else.
Yeah, that's where I learned everything that I know about you on the business side so far. Why did you start doing that, and like what came from it? Did you feel like you got value from it?
Yeah, man, it definitely had value. I didn't set it out to get anything out of it, to be honest with you. I mean, kind of, first of all, it started by accident, because of Sampar. And, so he kind of exposed me in a way. And that was kind of interesting. And, I was like, all right, screw it. Let me start sharing my stories. He was always telling me, dude, you got to share your stories. You got to share your stories. And, kind of personally, he would tell me that. And, so I did. I shared that one story about my search business, and that went viral on Twitter. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool. Let me try. You know, write some more stories." And yeah, I mean, a bunch of them actually went pretty viral. So I kind of did it in a big way, probably for about a year. Um, I didn't have any agenda really. It's cool to have build that audience, to have access to an audience. Yes, sometimes it helps. Like, you know, if I had trouble with something and I need access to somebody who works somewhere, it's pretty cool to get access to those people. Anytime I talk about my real estate business, you know, you get people reaching out and saying like, hey, like, how can I invest into your next deal? Which, by the way, like I started my real estate business with my own money, so we weren't even taking outside capital for most of our projects, until like later. And so like there were like accidental values that came, from building that audience, but it was never like my intention to do it for value or money or anything like that.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge
Got it.
investment of time, though. You know how it is. Like you put a ton of time into it, I think, and you also have a pretty big audience, and so I definitely put a lot of time into Twitter. You know, I don't want to say unfortunately, but it was definitely a big investment of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we started around the same time, and we both had, I don't know, less than 1,000 followers basically. And now we both have like 80, 90, 100,000 or something like that. I haven't checked recently, but it has been very positively impactful for my life. I've met a ton of interesting people, obviously met you through Twitter. And yeah, I can't imagine how much it's changed my life in like 2 years. It's totally like, if you had told me this 2 years ago, I would have never believed you, how impactful Twitter is, or how useful it could be for my life and my business.
I think at this point, you probably the same. I have like a group of people I know or friends who like I interact with now, who are kind of all came out of this like Twitter induced, friendship. And some people
For
actually
sure.
became closer friends than than others. And so it's actually very interesting, like, because, you know, I was always on some shape or form. I was like on LinkedIn or whatever. And like, you know, I was kind of on Twitter too, but never had any followers, never put any value into it. So once it took off, it just like, it kind of caught a life of its own in a way.
Yeah, I agree. It's been incredible. We had a shareholder meeting for Enduring Ventures a couple weeks ago in Miami, and it was a room of like 50 people, mostly shareholders, a few just friends. And one of my college friends was there. He's an investor in what we do. And he came to me afterwards and he's like, two things, like, I want to tell you. One, incredible event. I want to hire the same event planner. I was like, great. Second thing, he's like, I'm just astounded. Every single person I've met here met you on Twitter. That's 50 people. That's like,
So all 50 people at your event were from Twitter?
It wasn't all 50 because I had a couple of friends that I've known from college that invested,
mostly.
A couple of like Xavier's, but more than 40.
Wow. That's
Amazing.
Insane.
It is.
That's insane.
And like just really interesting, like good, genuine people that, met us online or heard what we were up to and decided to invest, decided that they liked what we were doing, Yeah,
look, I don't know what it is. It's, obviously they're genuine people on all the social networks, right? Whether it's LinkedIn or whatever, like there's genuine, it's just the way people tend to connect on Twitter. Like the quality of kind of direct messages I get from Twitter is just it's just different. Like it makes a lot more. Look, I get a lot of spam and I get a lot of people just asking me for ask's sake and whatever. And, it's only so much time you have for things. But the number of interesting inquiries or just people saying hello, like, love what you're doing. And like, let's just say what, let's connect. But the interesting people, I had never seen it that number or that kind of value from any other network before. So I think like some people joke around, say all the good stuff happens in the DMs, and it's very true actually on Twitter.
I have the same experience. I don't know why the quality is so high. I mean, it feels authentic. It feels like you learn a lot more about people on there. Maybe they know more about you, so they have that context when they reach out. But yeah, we've met some really incredible folks on there. Cool. Well, I want to wrap up. This is awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time, and I'm excited for your journey. I'm excited for the business you're currently building. So
thanks, man. Listen, I hope this podcast takes off. I think I'm one of the first people you interviewing, so I want to see this thing rocking.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I want it to go to the moon. Maybe top 10 business podcast. I don't know, or maybe I'll be like a top 10 therapy podcast. I could go for that
as well. you definitely have the way you speak is very like soothing. So you'd be like a business therapist. Is that what you are?
Yeah. Maybe that's what I am. Business therapist or ASMR. I don't really know what. But
business therapist with a happy ending because you acquired a business at the end.
That's right. Yeah, everybody wins. I will take any top 10 category. I'm not discerning, just to be clear. So this is great, man. Thank you.
All right, Sieva. Thanks for having me on, man.
And that's it for this week's episode of Boring Businesses. I'm your host, Sieva Kozinsky. Thank you for watching or listening today. Any resources we mentioned during the show, we'll make sure to link in the show notes or below the video. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, please leave me a review. It really helps me learn, and it allows other people to discover the podcast as well. Thanks again, and make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button if you haven't already. I'll see you next time.